Hello again, everybody. Gary Ferman and Matt Shodell here, and today we are discussing whether the Miami Hurricanes offense can thrive without a number one receiver. And Matt Shodell, I assume that we do not need to debate whether there is a number one receiver on this football team. I have to believe that you would agree with me that there is not. So can we start there? Do you agree with me that there is not a number one receiver on this team?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good. All right, so then let's move on here and talk about this a little bit. Let's start out with a little bit of a history lesson. And before 2022, the leading wide receiver for the Miami Hurricanes in the prior 5 years had 1,172 yards. In 2021, that was Charleston Rambo. I think the closest thing that Miami has had to a number one receiver in quite some time. And I'm going to show you why. In 2020, the leading receiver was Mike Harley. He had 799 yards. The year before that, 2019, it was KJ Osborne. He had 547 yards. In 2018, Jeff Thomas had 563 yards. And in 2017, Braxton Berrios, who is still playing in the National Football League, had 679 yards. Okay? Only Rambo's season could even open up a discussion about a number one receiver. And, you could certainly make an argument that in 2021, Charleston Rambo was a number one receiver. Now let's talk about last year, the season that the Miami Hurricanes bring into 2023. The top wideout on the team had 367 yards, okay, in Josh Gaddis's offense. That was junior college arrival Colby Young. And to put that in perspective for you guys that are watching today, the last time that the leading receiver on a Miami Hurricanes team had under 400 yards in a season was all the way back in 2008 on Randy Shannon's 7-6 team that season. So you can look at all the data, Matt, and to me, and I've been saying this for years, that it all points to one thing. An offense is only going to be able to do so much if it doesn't have a go-to number one receiver. Okay. There are going to be times when you need a great player to bail you out of a jam. You might have a day where you're just not playing your best. You might have a day where you turn the ball over. You might have a day where you have an inordinate number of penalties. You're going to have several days during the course of a season where the games are going to come down to the fourth quarter. And you need a guy to make plays the way Rambo made plays for Tyler Van Dyke a few seasons ago. And so bringing us to this year, you got a lot of, I'll say, potential talent in the receiver room this year, guys that should thrive in Shannon Dawson's offense. But Matt, we agree there is not a number one receiver. And how much do you think that is going to impact the overall output of the offense this season?
Well, first of all, you didn't talk about why it's important to have a number one receiver in general. I mean, my whole thing last year when we talked about this similar situation was Miami doesn't need a number one receiver. They need 3 number one receivers. They need 4 number one receivers. Just a bunch of guys that can just make plays. There's nothing wrong with that. But it turns out they had nobody that can make plays. And even Colby Young, he had 2 back-to-back 100-yard games against, I think maybe it was Virginia and Duke or something like that. And Virginia Tech and Duke, maybe. I don't know, something like that. I'm probably completely wrong. But whatever. It was 2 back-to-back games. You take those away, he had like 150 yards the rest of the year.
He disappeared for much of the rest of the season. Why?
Because I think he only knew how to run a few different routes. And he was figured out those were the only routes he was running. And on top of that, Tyler Van Dyke got hurt. So it was a bad combination of things. But regardless, maybe it's easier. For some reason, people don't equate wide receiver to defensive line, but it's easier to think about it. If you have a bunch of average defensive linemen, it's pretty easy to as an offense to attack that. If you have a dominant defensive end or even a dominant defensive tackle, there's one guy who commands double teams constantly, that opens up other guys that might be average to slightly above average to actually make plays. So when there's nobody that commands that safety help over the top, that hurts your running game at receiver, obviously. When there's nobody that basically, that your quarterback can say, I know he's going to be open when I see this one, when I'm basically reading a blitz and I can see that he's going to have one-on-one coverage, the quarterback knows that's his first read. Like, that guy's going to be open. It's no big deal. Where quarterbacks get into trouble is when they have to come off that first read. You're in the face of a blitz or a good pass rush. Your offensive line has a freshman offensive tackle, maybe two freshman offensive tackle, whatever it is. And now all of a sudden, this is how turnovers happen. So yeah, having a top number one receiver is very, very important. I want to point that out first. Having a few top number one receivers is preferable. But the other thing I'd point to is the last 2 years, Shannon Dawson's offense, he's used to having Tank Dell. He's used to having a clear number one receiver who can make the offense go. And he was the guy. I mean, they lined him up in the slot most of the time. And he went to work and was constantly open. And maybe Xavier Restrepo can become that. We haven't really seen that he can do that. But if there is going to be a number one receiver, in my opinion, it's not going to be Mr. 4.24, Tyler Harrell. It's not going to be Colby Young off his 2 big 100-yard games last year. It's going to be Xavier Restrepo, because Xavier is roommates with Tyler. They think with the same brain almost. They study together at night. So if Xavier can sort of put it together, he has a knack for getting open. I mean, picture those Wake Forest guys running those quick little routes. That's him. Miami never ran an offense like that before. And really, the Shannon Dawson offense is not that little Wake Forest dink and dunk offense. But with that said, when the slot guy has over 1,000 yards in his last offense use, and you think, okay, maybe he can find a real way to make Xavier a weapon. And there's a reason that you don't hear the coaches in the spring talking about Xavier this, Xavier that, because they don't want other teams to know that he might wind up being their number one guy. And I think that's probably going to be the case. So, yeah, I think that could be their top receiver, but he's not proven. Like Mike Harley had that 799-yard season, which was a really good season, off of never doing anything for 4 years before that, really. So it can happen. So the other thing is the year before, when Shannon Dawson was not the offensive coordinator at Houston, he arrived there. I can't remember what his title was, but he arrived at Houston his first year. And that year in 2020, I think it was the passing game coordinator and the wide receivers coach. And they didn't have a number one receiver that year. They had 5 different guys, none of whom had over 430 yards. And they all had between 225 and 430 yards now that I'm looking at it. And that team averaged 30 points and 408 yards per game, which is not as good as they did the last couple of years under Dawson, but it's not bad. It would make Miami's offense last year, it would put them to shame. So, it can be done as a committee approach if the committee's good, right? That we just keep coming back to the same thing. They need a bunch of good guys or one really, really good guy that can take the pressure off the other ones who are average.
All right. Well, so you have a wide receiver room of guys with limited resumes of production. Even Tyler Harrell, the plum pickup in the transfer portal, had very modest stats earlier in his career at Louisville, and then he's hurt at Alabama. But these are all guys that are trying to prove themselves at the same time. And I think what Miami's counting on, I don't think Miami's harboring any illusions that they have an Andre Johnson or Michael Irvin or Reggie Wayne or anything like that on this roster. I think that they are counting on the system and better quarterback play this year, making these guys collectively better. And whoever gets the hot hand, whether it be a given week, a given month, maybe even for the whole season, my guess is they'll ride that guy as far as they can. But I think it's going to be receiver by committee, including in the slot where Restrepo is going to do most of his work. And, I think Ray Joseph is going to command reps there. I think Brashard Smith will command some reps there. Robbie Washington might even command some reps there. So I don't know if Restrepo, even with his clear chemistry with Tyler Van Dyke, will get enough yards to be called a number one receiver. I think Tyler Van Dyke maybe learned the hard way a little bit that he better not be so focused on one guy, even if you're talking about his roommate, that he better be prepared to spread the ball around this year in Shannon Dawson's system. That is what I am expecting to happen. So when will the Miami Hurricanes ever have a number one receiver again? Well, say your prayers every night, because there is one out there playing high school ball right now in the Hollywood area in Broward County, and that is Jeremiah Smith, the top recruit in this class for sure, top receiver in the country. He is presently committed to Ohio State. Miami is working as hard as you possibly can to recruit Jeremiah Smith because he is a transformational signee. He is Andre Johnson. He is Michael Irvin. He is like guys that have been lost by Miami in the past. You think back to Jerry Jeudy and Calvin Ridley and these kind of guys that went on and had great careers at Alabama, then became first-round draft picks. Jeremiah Smith is as good or better than those guys. This is just an absolute, I mean, I call him a must-get, except right now he's committed to Ohio State. You don't want to set the coaching staff up for failure, but Jeremiah Smith is going to be watching very, very closely the production that this group of receivers can get under Shannon Dawson during this football season. And that success rate and what they are able to produce on the season this year, Matt, is going to go a long way to determining whether Miami can finally recruit that dude that can be a #1 receiver in this program. Your closing thoughts.
Well, as it pertains to Jeremiah Smith in particular, yeah, it's great if Miami can have a really good offense, really good defense, for sure. But there's a flip side to it also. If Tyler Van Dyke has a great year and goes pro early, does Jeremiah Smith say, "Oh, I trust Jakari Brown and Emory Williams with my future"? I don't know. Does you just trust that Mario Cristobal will bring in a top transfer quarterback? I don't know. So there are other issues there besides Jeremiah Smith just saying that he wants to see how the offense does this season. These guys, they want to play with top talent. They want to play with 5-star and 4-star fellow signees. Miami got off on the right track with the #6 class in the last cycle. And this cycle, they're putting up numbers in commitments, and they're getting some really good talent. But at the end of the day, you do need some 5-star guys to round out a class and get people excited. And 5-stars tend to have other highly touted recruits join them because of exactly that. They want a quarterback who can throw them the ball. They want a guy on the other side of the defensive line who can command attention also, things like that. So yeah, it's a work in progress. Miami definitely needs to have a good season this year. They need to show improvement, vast improvement on offense for sure, some improvement on defense. And if the wins come with it, great, but you have to show improvement. I mean, that's ultra important. Put some guys into the NFL draft, hopefully the first 2 or 3 rounds. Just show that upward trend because that's what Mario Cristobal is, basically promising recruits that they're going to see, and they need to see it.
All right, if you like this show, like our YouTube channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube, grow our audiences, and more so than anything, make sure that you are presently a subscriber to CaneSport.com. It's your subscriptions that allow us to do for you what we do every single day. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time, everybody.